If you're an offer owner or a sales manager building out a sales team for the first time, one of the most overlooked parts of building that team is having a good setting process, right? And over the past couple months, while I built a sales team for the first time for my business, I've realized how important my setting team has been for my sales team. And I'm going to go over how you can set up a setting team that provides a strong foundation for your sales team to succeed, right? Moreover, previously is I would just hire closers and they would always churn after 1 to 2 months. And I thought, oh, maybe it was me, maybe it was my offer, maybe I'm not spending on ad spend. But really is I didn't have a proven setting process, right? And yes, you know, you can find a unicorn closer that sets all of his own calls, and closes all his deals, does all the follow-ups. And that's true, right? But I do have those type of closers now, but in order for you to provide a strong foundation for them to get to that point and be motivated, you need to have a dialed in setting process. So in this video, I'm gonna go over why setters are more important than closers and how to structure your team so that you have a strong foundation for your sales team, right? And so let's take a look on why this is actually so important, right? Is for most of you looking at this call, you likely you're building a sales team depending on the funnel that's ran, but most funnels that are ran is a call funnel. And from the call funnel, likely two things are happening. Either they're booking a pretty much 1 hour sales call, or they're doing like a 10 or 15 minute discovery with a setter account. And so two things. If they put a 1 hour sales call, right, that's on your sales team. And then the other one is for your setter to do, right? There's two ways where you can do this. And I did the latter for a very long time. I had a 1 hour sales call and I had a sales team. And so for each salesperson, I had at least one setter. In some businesses, they have even 2 setters. Now, why do you need 2 setters? Well, a closer needs to have a minimum of 3 to 6 calls per day, qualified calls that show. And if the setters aren't able to provide this, your closer is going to leave, right? And the thing is, at scale, if you're throwing a lot of money onto the board into ad spend and calls aren't showing, right? There's probably something wrong with your funnel, your process. But what's going to happen is your sales team is going to be discouraged and then they're going to leave. And so what I learned over time in mass is what I actually am transitioning to currently is I'm doing 10 to 15 minute calls that I place on a closer's calendar for the initial discovery to pre-qualify, and then the setter will book a sales call on the sales team's calendar. What that does is we make sure that we don't have a 1 hour slot on a closer's calendar and it's a waste of time. That we follow the 80-20 rule, that 80% of results come from actually 20% of our efforts, right? And that effort comes from the setter. So I don't want our closer to be sitting there for a call to no-show or be someone unqualified. But our process obviously is, some books a 1 hour sales call, but we also go call them and qualify them, right, before the call. But sometimes it's a self-booking and we don't have that opportunity, or we're going to make sure now is that every call, is pretty much pre-qualified before we book it in, right? Yes, puts more pressure on the setting team, but it's going to set up your sales team for success, right? Now, there's not a problem with this current process where you book 1 hour sales calls, because when I was the only sales rep and the owner of the business, I did that. And it got me to 50, 60K per month, right? But more if you don't want to scale, horizontally and need to hire more and more sales reps just to take more calls, and a lot of your sales are just sitting there for nothing to do because someone no-showed, and you want to scale vertically, it's better for you to just hire more setters or have really, really talented setters that can pre-qualify more of the calls and do the discovery and make sure they're qualified to put actual qualified calls on a sales team's calendar. So this is a transition that I made, and I saw this process in a lot of offers that was doing way more than me, and I was like, they're definitely doing something right that I'm not doing to get to that point. And the second thing on why setters are so important is, let's say, for me, let's say you're to spend, I had a competitor spending $300 per day on ads. what was getting, he was getting 6 calls booked, he told me. He's a competitor and agency of mine, and then 3 calls show. $100 per show. It's not too bad. But he was the owner and operator. I was spending the same $300. As about a volume-based approach. It's getting around 5, 4, say around 12 leads. Actually no, so it was like 20, so it's like 25, 15 leads. And we would be able to qualify and book probably 8 out of them. 8 calls, and ensure that upwards to 5 to 6 show. So my cost per show is $50 per show. But why do I need to do this, and why do I have a volume-based approach, and how am I able to achieve more calls booked from the same amount of money? It's because I have a dialed setting process. So instead of relying on my funnel and sitting there for waiting, hoping my calls to show, I have the setters call and force consumption of content and pre-qualify, right? Whereas the $300 on ads, he's hoping to get just 6 calls that are quality. But in fact, you can never hope that your funnel and your marketing is completely dialed, even if it really is dialed. You're gonna have 6 calls that show, 3 show, and you're sitting there. So if he just scale his ad spend without changing his process, he's leaving a lot of money on the table. Whereas, yes, yeah, you're gonna have to pay your closers, your setters. But for that $300 on ads, if I have half the acquisition cost and I close pretty much at double what the other guy closes, I'm going to have the money to scale and get more setters, right? And then maybe the reason that you feel like, oh, I don't need a setting process, the funnel's good. Right, so you could rely on that, but you're gonna leave money on the table, right? Setters ensures that you can have volume, and it ensures that you're making the most out of your ad spend, right? The last thing that you want is spending and scaling your ad spend, and then have money leak out from your funnel just because you don't have setters to force that process in, right? So this is one thing that I saw, because I had a competitor that shared what he was spending on ads, what he was getting, and I had a completely different experience than him, actually, in our business. So, setters are super important. There's different ways if you have a call funnel to set it up. But if you're interested in maybe having us help you set up this process, feel free to book a call just below, and we'll see if we're a good fit to work together.